This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Burkina Faso begins 2 days of mourning after militants kill 36. U.S. Senate Republicans assert their numerical strength on day one of Trump's
U.S. Senate Republicans
trial.
assert their numerical strength on day
And
one
confirmed cases of the new
Trump's
coronavirus in China reaches 450, with 9 people dead.
A virus in China reaches 450.
This
9
is
people dead.
CGTN.
A virus
Welcome
in
to Africa
China
Live
reaches.
with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also coming up on the program, we'll be looking at the ripple effect after troubled South African Airlines cancelled 38 flights. And in your sports, the African champions Algeria get a favourable group as the World Cup qualifiers draw takes place in Cairo.
The World Cup qualifiers draw
Begin
takes
in
place.
China, where the number of confirmed cases of the new
World Cup
coronavirus worldwide is rising. Over 450 cases have been confirmed in China. This includes 1 in Taiwan and 1 in Macau. Most cases are in southern and central China. Outside China, the United States, Japan and South Korea all have confirmed a case, and Thailand 4. Singapore has 7 suspected cases. Meanwhile, an Australian has just been cleared of having the deadly disease. 9 people have been killed by the virus so far. Well, the mayor of the central Chinese city of Wuhan, where the outbreak of the virus originated, has urged residents not to travel outside the city and recommended others to stay away. Chow Yunfei has more.
I'm just about 800 meters away from the Huanan seafood market, where the experts have confirmed the origin of the pneumonia. What has been really worrying is there's a railway station quite near the seafood market, just behind me, the Hankou railway station. Wuhan sits on the center of the network, so it's a very pivotal transport hub. Now, for the local authorities, it's very important to prevent people who already have fever from leaving the city. So far, 35 body temperature detectors have been placed at a railway station and airports in Wuhan. The head of the Wuhan municipal government, Zhou Xianwang, says during the Spring Festival travel rush, there are 5 million people leaving Wuhan. If there's no effective measures being taken, the reverse travel rush will worsen the situation. The railway authority has announced a free of charge to rebook trips going to or leaving the city.
China says it will be transparent in releasing information related to the virus. The country's top health authority vowed national and international coordination to contain the outbreak. CGTN's Wu Shoshu reports from the State Information Office.
With well over 400 confirmed cases of pneumonia linked to the coronavirus in China, national efforts are underway to prevent further outbreaks.
The Chinese government and people are confident we can defeat the new epidemic and win this battle.
China's National Health Commission and 32 government departments have set up a new mechanism vowing effective coordination. Dealing of the epidemic will be carried out based on laws. People outside Wuhan are advised to avoid going there, and Wuhan residents are advised not to leave the city, but authorities say the warnings are not mandatory yet.
Next, we will continue to focus on Wuhan and strengthen the implementation of various prevention and control measures. At the same time, we will further strengthen nationwide prevention and control work, strictly implement the prevention and control measures during the Chinese New Year travel rush.
And they vow not to hide the truth. The nation's top health authority says they have released all key information in a timely manner and vows to stay transparent.
We attach great importance to information disclosure, which is very important, in order to make the public timely, accurately, and comprehensively understand the information. From January 20th, the National Health Commission began collecting and releasing the data of confirmed cases and suspected cases in all provinces of the country every day. It can be seen on the National Health Commission's website.
The authorities say China immediately reported the cases to countries including Russia, as well as Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, as many as 15 times. Information is being shared with technical departments and embassies of Thailand, Japan, South Korea, and the U.S. Free diagnostic reagents have been offered to Hong Kong and Macau. The nation has been keeping close contact with the World Health Organization from the beginning.
We have maintained close communication with the WHO, and we shared the whole gene sequence of the new coronavirus with the WHO at the beginning. We have set up a special team to organize in-depth exchanges between Chinese experts and the WHO's experts on the disease. At present, 4 expert communication meetings have been held, and WHO experts have been invited to Wuhan for on-the-spot investigation.
Authorities say so far there's no evidence of a super spreader like with SARS or MERS outbreaks in years past. One patient infected over 100 other people, and that's a key area of focus now. The top health authority has been publishing a daily data of confirmed cases in each province since Monday. They say there's a possibility that the virus might mutate and the epidemic might spread further, but they vow to stay transparent in releasing relative information in a timely manner. Wu Guoxiu, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, Beijing has also vowed transparency in its reports on the coronavirus to all relevant parties.
China has always been open and transparent with information and highly responsible in terms of global health security. We are reporting to the World Health Organization, relevant countries, and China's Hong Kong and Macau special administrative regions and Taiwan in a timely manner. We will further strengthen cooperation with the international community and ramp up protection efforts to combat the coronavirus and safeguard regional and global health.
The U.S. Senate has voted to approve the Republican proposed resolution laying out the rules for President Donald Trump's impeachment trial. After debate that lasted into Wednesday morning, the Republican-controlled chamber rejected Democratic efforts to obtain evidence and ensure witnesses are heard. The next phase begins on Wednesday and will include opening arguments. Conviction on just a single article is enough to remove Trump from office.
If not, the ayes are 53, the nays are 47. The resolution is agreed to.
Burkina Faso has begun 2 days of national mourning for the 36 civilians killed in recent terrorist attacks. Flags will be flown at half-mast and festivals cancelled. On Monday, heavily armed men stormed the villages of Alamau and Nagraugo, killing civilians and setting fire to a local market. The country's northern regions have seen a rise in militant attacks since 2015. More than 700 people have been killed, including 200 soldiers. Thousands others remain displaced. The government plans to train a civilian volunteer force to fight armed groups. Parliament voted unanimously on Tuesday to create this force. If approved, volunteers will undergo 14 days of military training. While the United Nations Security Council has hailed foreign powers for committing to help end the conflict in Libya. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says the warring parties now need to quickly conclude a ceasefire agreement.
There's still a long way to go. We have a truce. The truce is having some violations, but not widespread violations. They are localized until now. We need to move to a ceasefire, and from the ceasefire we need to move a real political process. And we are not yet there. And so this meeting of the Security Council is very important, and the pressure of the international community over the parties to the conflict and those that have an influence on them to make sure that this roadmap is implemented, that we have the truce transformed into a ceasefire and a true political process. The pressure of the international community is essential. The role of the Security Council is essential.
The Democratic Republic of Congo will mark its first anniversary of President Felix Tshisekedi's term in office on Friday. It was the country's first peaceful transfer of power since independence. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa tells us that Congolese citizens have expressed mixed reactions about their leader's achievements.
The inauguration of President Felix Tshisekedi as the DRC's fifth leader was a change welcomed by many. Life had become difficult for many Congolese during the 18 years of former President Joseph Kabila due to widespread unemployment. Supporters of the president say they are satisfied with his first year in office.
He
has built schools, hospitals, and stepped up the fight against Ebola. Cases of the deadly disease have reduced because of his support.
The president has been hailed for releasing political prisoners, allowing opposition politicians to hold demonstrations, and introducing free primary education.
DRC is back and in the right way. Today we are able to face and to represent, to set our country to the real dimension that our country deserves.
President Felix Tshisekedi has improved the DRC's relations with Western countries that had fallen out with his predecessor, Joseph Kabila, during his first year in office. But he still has a lot to do domestically to improve the welfare of his people. Some observers say not much has changed since the president took office last year.
Issues like corruption are still going on in our country, and the president made a mistake by dismissing a $15 million scandal as a commission in a TV interview.
The changes the president has been able to make so far have been lauded by some Congolese, but many of them are hoping to see his plan of improving their economic condition realized sooner rather than later. Chris Sochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Residents living in areas surrounding Côte d'Ivoire's main airport in Abidjan have been ordered to leave their homes within 45 days. This follows a previous deadline for the 20th of January. Tens of thousands have been evicted following the death of a 14-year-old boy who snuck onto the undercarriage of an Air France plane. He was found on the plane when it landed in Paris earlier this month. CGTN's Wilkisa Nyabwa brings us the details.
With their belongings scattered everywhere, these residents pack up what they can with the little time that they have left. The evictions in the surrounding areas of Côte d'Ivoire's main airport in Abidjan has affected nearly 500,000 people. Many remain in disarray.
Today, when the government asks us to leave a place where we lived for about 50 years, we really don't know where to go.
According to the Ministry of Construction, the populations living around the airport are there without property titles.
It is a place that has been declared a public domain. We have on several occasions informed the populations which have moved there illegally that sooner or later they will have to leave these places. It is true that there is a human dimension to this relocation activity, since there are families which have moved there, albeit illegally, but they are still families. So it's important for the government to do it as decently as possible, because most of these families are very vulnerable.
Following the incident, the managing director of the National Civil Aviation Authority also spoke about the case. He reassured the public that the incident did not compromise the quality of the airport security.
The audits that have been carried out have revealed that the airport Abidjan is the best in Africa in terms of security. What happened can happen anywhere. This is an opportunity to improve the system that exists.
Investigations are underway into how the 14-year-old managed to scale the airport wall and enter the landing gear of an Air France plane. After the evictions, a 200-meter perimeter wall from the north to the south of the airport will be established. This will serve as a permanent patrol area. Wilkisa Nyabwa, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Tigers and lions rescued from Guatemalan circuses arrive at a South African sanctuary. And Egypt considers a raft of measures to restore its critical freshwater resources.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
At least 12 tigers and 5 lions have arrived in a wildlife sanctuary in South Africa after being rescued from circuses in Guatemala. The animals comprise both cubs and adults. They are among 200 others that have been freed from the circus industry in Guatemala, Peru, Bolivia and Colombia since 2018. The countries have banned the use of animals in circuses. Animal conservationists say the animals endured years of abuse and confinement before they were rescued. The lions and tigers were chartered to South Africa and arrived on Tuesday morning. They were then released into their new home soon after arrival. According to Animal Defenders International, before their rescue, the animals had been kept in a vehicle scrapyard in Guatemala and physically abused to make them submissive.
The conditions that the animals were living in Guatemala were horrific. The thing that people now understand about circuses is that the animals are beaten, they're electric shocked, they're deprived of their natural environment. You know, these beautiful animals lived in the wild. They were stolen from the wild and taken to the US and sold to circuses in Central and South America.
In Tunisia, customs officials operating at the Tahiba border crossing between Tunisia and Libya have seized an ancient Hebrew manuscript in the form of leather scrolls. It was in the possession of a Libyan citizen who was entering Tunisia. The discovery has raised concerns about the protection of Tunisian and Libyan artifacts.
The Bardo Museum in Tunis houses the largest collections of Roman mosaics in the world, as well as unique artifacts that tell the rich history of the North African civilizations. The director of the museum says that innumerable Libyan artifacts were stolen while many were recovered in the past 9 years. Fatma Neitigil also warned against the consequences of the war in Libya on the cultural heritage in the region.
Hundreds of invaluable artifacts were stolen from Libya during the 2011 unrest and onward. I led the Tunisia-Libya Cooperation Project by training Libyan experts on safeguarding artifacts during a crisis period because the situation is alarming on border regions.
The Agency for the Development of National Heritage and Cultural Promotion, as well as security forces, have taken all necessary measures to protect museums and archaeological sites nationwide.
The reproduction of manuscripts guarantees their preservation. This is how they can be made available to the public for exhibition or sale. In this way, people will not be tempted to buy originals because they know the consequences.
Experts assert that looters quickly dispose of stolen goods by selling them online or through messaging platforms. Fortunately, technological advances also assist the authorities and heritage specialists.
The agency has one of the most efficient and modern security systems in North Africa. Technology helps us face the scourge. This is a huge responsibility that we share with many national stakeholders.
The General Directorate of Customs has recently seized an illustrated Hebrew manuscript. It includes 12 pages. A Libyan suspect was planning to sell it on the island of Jerba. Experts assert that Libyan and foreign thieves have ruined hundreds of incomparable and unprotected archaeological sites. Many were arrested while trying to smuggle and sell the stolen antiquities. Tunisian authorities have recovered many artifacts worth millions of dollars. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Now, the population growth rate in Egypt is among the highest in the world, and it greatly impacts its water consumption. The country needs more than 84 billion cubic meters annually to fulfill current needs. Its natural resources, mostly from the Nile, provides a little less than 60 billion. This has pushed the country to invest tremendously to cut waste and increase its freshwater resources. Here's CGTN's Adel Mahroui with more.
Before the sun rises, Salah Hussein wakes up for his daily duties. As a porter, he needs to make sure that all cars for his building of 20 apartments are clean. Washing cars have been one of the habits the Egyptian authorities have been cracking down to cut the water waste resulted. Soaking a piece of cloth in a half-a-gallon water bucket to wash them, Salah is a responsible citizen who uses the least volume needed to accomplish his mission.
On average, I use 3 buckets of water for about 22 cars. Sometimes I use 2 buckets of water. I have a brush which I use when the car is too dirty. I've been doing that even before the municipality issued its penalties on water use. The landlord here always instructs me to save water. When I used to spray the sheet with water, they'd yell at me and tell me we'll need that wasted water later.
Most people are not as aware as Salah, though. Egypt's natural resources of water make up about 60 billion cubic meters annually. The River Nile provides 55.5 of these. Currently, the country has a deficit of 24 billion cubic meters to cover its needs. So controlling water waste has always been a priority.
The government is now diminishing and regulating planting crops which consume immense volumes of water. We are expanding the usage of advanced irrigation methods. We are also introducing new gears for house usage, which have been a great success in dropping household consumption. Citizens have a major role to take, and the government is trying to monitor violations as much as possible.
The Egyptian government says it's allocating some $50 billion from water management until the year 2037. Investments have been pouring in desalination and recycling projects. Agriculture is the biggest challenge. It consumes about 85% of Egypt's water. Most of it is poorly managed.
Traditional irrigation systems, which are common in Egypt, could waste up to 40% of water depending on the crop. It's why Egypt is moving in an ambitious plan to shift them into modern sprinklers by the year 2030. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
In Nigeria, a set of twins joined at the chest and abdomen have been successfully separated in the capital, Abuja. The 2 girls are now back home. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam brings us their story.
Goodness and Mercy Ede are back in hospital for their routine check. The Siamese twins were joined at the chest and abdomen. They were also diagnosed with a rare condition called omphalocele, meaning part of their intestine was sticking out of their navel. The district hospital where they were born couldn't manage their complicated condition, so they were moved here to the National Hospital.
This one, very, very unique, very complicated, and very, very delicate. They have one liver, you know, and as God will have it, the liver, the one liver, was big enough to be shared for the 2 of them. And that is what we did.
Conjoined twins are very rare as 1 in 50,000 births worldwide. They're either stillborn or die shortly after birth, especially in this part of the world where medical advancement is still a work in progress. It took a medical team comprising 78 personnel over 1 year to plan and execute the surgery. Such surgeries don't come cheap. They cost as much as 20 million naira or $55,000. However, it was done at little or no cost to the family.
It's like corporate social responsibility for National Hospital, but what we did it almost free.
The conjoined twins came as a shock to their mother. Caring for them wasn't easy, but their separation has brought great relief.
Those 2 babies being stuck together, bathing them, everything you want to do with them, you carry them together. Bathing them, carry together, feeding them, you carry it and sit on your lap together. After feeding one, you switch to one. And sometimes, like if they wake up in the morning, when both of them are very hungry, feeding one another, one is seriously crying, wanting the food. From time to time, I have to turn them because it's only one-sided. They can lie. You attend to them individually now.
Now, goodness and mercy have a chance at life independently. Doctors have been closely monitoring their progress and they've been doing well so far. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
In Ghana, celebrations for the Chinese Spring Festival have begun in the capital, Accra. They kicked off with an event featuring hundreds of Chinese nationals coming together to experience artistic performances, including music and dance. From Accra, here's CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai.
New Year festivities providing a taste of China in Ghana. The Accra International Conference Center hosted performers from China for a special production.
I'm very happy to perform for the Chinese community in Ghana. I'm glad they enjoyed my performance.
The event was organized by the Chinese Embassy as part of a series of celebrations of the Chinese Spring Festival. The performers from the China National Symphony Orchestra and China Oriental Arts Group thrilled the audience with a display of music and dance.
China is really a mix of cultures, we have I saw the Uyghurs, that is the minorities in China, and a lot of people, a lot of tribes and a lot of confidence, so I've really enjoyed it.
I enjoy the dance and music and Africa and China song. I think it's very interesting.
The Chinese Spring Festival is also part of a cultural exchange between the two countries. This year's Chinese Spring Festival coincides with the 60th anniversary of China-Ghana diplomatic relations. Both countries are looking to strengthen partnerships to boost economic development. The trade volume between the two countries hit $7.2 billion in 2018.
For the past 60 years, Ghana-China relations have withstood the test of time and have continued to develop and deepen. I hope that the cooperation between our two countries will be more enhanced and grow from strength to strength.
Still, there are concerns that the industrial sector in Ghana is being challenged by the increased imports of manufactured goods from China. Both countries are now collaborating to set up industries in Ghana to bridge the gap, and while at it, they hope to deepen friendship ties through cultural exchanges. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
And your business news is coming up next. Here's what's ahead. We'll look at the ripple effect after troubled South African Airlines cancels 38 flights. And we bring you the latest from the Davos World Economic Forum, now in its second day.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
State-owned South African Airlines has announced the cancellation of 38 domestic and international flights over the week in a bid to save money. The national carrier says the move is in line with its usual policy of reviewing flights and consolidating services with low demand. The airline recently also put 9 of its older planes up for sale. Well, our correspondent Angelo Coppola has been following this story. He's now joining us live from the Oliver O.R. Tambo Airport. Angela, so what's the latest from the airport? How has this state of affairs affected business and passengers?
Well, as it stands right now, Beatrice, of those 38 flights that have been cancelled or consolidated as SAA are spinning it, 10 of those are international flights that are going to Munich and also going to Heathrow. And Heathrow is a very lucrative destination for South African Airways, in fact for any airline, because those slots at that airport are so hard to come by. So we're sitting now with a situation where it's just the cancellations for this week, and it's unclear because SAA aren't sharing any more information about what's going to happen from Saturday for the following week. And it's expected that we're going to have more delay or more suspensions or cancellations or consolidations for the following week, because SAA, of course, are trying to save money via their business process or business rescue practitioners. So that's where we stand in terms of that. In terms of the consumers and potential passengers, they're looking at the cancellations and are probably thinking to themselves, we need to get onto a flight, we need a confirmation of a flight, we don't need to be shunted around. So they're moving their business, and the flight agents are also moving their business to other airlines that can confirm and guarantee where the actual plane will take off and whether it will land on time as well. So those domestic flights are being consolidated into the local or the SAA's domestic flight operations via Mango, so that's dealt with. And then of course we have the crew of those cancelled flights. They're on the ground at the moment and they're not earning any extra revenue if they were flying internationally, because there's that stipend that they earn. So they're sitting around on their hands waiting to see what's going to happen next week. And then finally, around the funding, because of course, as you know, the government has confirmed that it's going to allocate some 2 billion rand to the airline to help it make it to the end of the month. But that money hasn't been allocated or found or released just yet. So we're sitting with a couple of very big questions about what's going to happen with the airline in the next couple of weeks, because we're going to hit that critical phase at the end of the month, which is at the end of February. Beatrice?
Well, Angelo Coppola joining us there from Johannesburg with that update on the South African Airlines. Thank you. Now, while all eyes are on Trump's impeachment trial, the U.S. president is thousands of kilometers away in Davos. He outlined his America First agenda at the World Economic Forum. But a different message came from Chinese Vice Premier Han Sheng, who is also there. CGTN's Guy Henderson reports.
A slightly different US president we saw on display here in Davos, perhaps betraying himself, certainly to his electorate back home, as more of a fixer than a spoiler. He talked about the track record of his government on domestic economic policy, holding up some of his policies as a model for some of the other governments here, and saying that it had led to what he called a blue-collar boom that was looking after and caring for the fortunes of middle-class Americans. On trade, on the international front, the US president said that the cause of the imbalances in global trade were not due to the tariffs that his government had slapped on China over the course of the past 4 years, but was in fact due to years of what he called predatory trade practices by China. And he said that the Phase 1 trade deal that he had now struck with the Chinese government was proof that his policies had worked. Needless to say, the Chinese Vice Premier, who was also talking here in Davos, had a rather different interpretation of the cause of those imbalances in the global trade system.
China will open its door still wider to the world. Despite the protectionist and unilateral moves by some countries, China will not stop pursuing higher quality opening up and will not follow their footsteps to move in the opposite direction of globalization.
Under our new Phase 1 agreement, Phase 2 is starting negotiations very shortly. China has agreed to substantially do things that they would not have done.
So two leaders there with very different interpretations of the cause of those problems, but extraordinary to say it perhaps, but the US president did also say in his speech that in his view, with this Phase 1 trade deal signed, the relationship between China and the United States was now possibly better than it had ever been. Guy Henderson, CGTN, Davos.
Well, Guy Henderson is still in Davos. He's now joining me live from there. Guy, so what other messages are coming out of the World Economic Forum and what's on the cards for today?
Good morning from Davos. So day one, Tuesday, was really the sort of headline act with Donald Trump's speech, the Chinese Vice Premier. A number of events of interest, I think, to an international audience through the course of day two here in Davos as well. We had a session on Middle East tensions with the Turkish Foreign Minister a little earlier in the morning. In a couple of hours, we're going to be hearing from Carrie Lam, the embattled Chief Executive of Hong Kong, who no doubt will be asked to comment and talk about the months of protests that have been taking place there. Where we are now located is a side event, one of hundreds of side events taking place right across this Swiss resort town over the few days of this event, which is looking at China's route towards becoming a wealthier economy. High quality development and poverty reduction is the theme. You'll be able to hear some of the sessions going on behind me. A discussion really about the extent to which China has lifted so many billions of people out of poverty and to what extent that model could be applied to other countries as well, particularly with the use of the Belt and Road project, this huge trade corridor that China is supporting and developing all the way from the west of China through Central Asia and the Middle East into Europe and other parts of the world. Two sides to the argument, of course. A lot of the people in here, Chinese, Western, from all over the world, singing the praises of Belt and Road. We've just heard somebody talking about how it can unlock trade, strengthen economic growth, connect the countries taking part in the Belt and Road project to other parts of the world. We even heard a European member of the board here now just talking about how, to some extent, it could help Europe tackle its migration issues by tackling the problem at source, giving people in countries outside of the European continent less of a reason to leave because of the level of economic development happening in their own countries. So that's the pro side. The sort of focus of discussion here. There are obviously critics and skeptics of the Belt and Road project as well, those who say it is perhaps a geopolitical play by China. There are concerns, of course, mostly expressed outside this room, I have to say, about the extent to which it might leave countries with an unsustainable debt pile, reliant on China. So those are the kind of pros and cons, and just one of the many broad discussion points taking place across the World Economic Forum on day two here in Davos.
All right, Guy Henderson joining us there from Davos. Thank you. Let's now look at Kenya's economy. A rebound in agriculture and increased access to credit by the private sector is expected to propel the economy to a 5.9% growth this year. In a release projection, Stanbic Bank's Gibran Qureshi says sustained rains over the recent months will support the nation's leading employer. In addition, the resumption of normalcy in key export markets would also drive growth. Qureshi adds that despite being the largest employer, agriculture has somewhat been neglected. The repeal of the interest capping law is also expected to drive growth, with banks previously having shunned individual borrowers and small businesses. Egyptian dealers collect used tires from across the country to deliver them to Mit Al Harboon. That's a village fast becoming famous for its recycling tire works. The workshops boost environmental protection while creating much-needed employment. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has more.
In Mit Al Harboon, a village in Egypt, residents have for decades eked out a living by recycling old tires into baskets, landscaping materials, and alternative fuels. From early morning, workers covered in soot and dust can be seen sharpening their knives to cut huge tires stockpiled on the village's roadsides.
We get used to car tires that are dumped in the rubbish bins. Some dealers bring them to us and we cut them in half. Then my colleagues split the inner layers using a winch, shaping them into rubber baskets.
The heavy-duty baskets are often used by farmers, gardeners, and laborers. This small Nile Delta village, 70 kilometers north of Cairo, has gained a reputation as Egypt's top rubber recycling hub. Dealers collect used tires from across the country, delivering them to Mit Al Harboon in huge trucks. Prices per tire go up to around $4. The handful of workers in the workshop process up to 10 tires per day, producing between 80 to 120 baskets. Although his business is successful and going from strength to strength, there are hurdles.
Most of the workers here suffer from carpal tunnel syndrome, since our entire work depends on working with our hands. So most of the workers have problems with their nerves on their hands. That's why they do the surgery, which relieves the worker from pain for a while before it returns again.
The tires don't always end up being repurposed. They often end up chopped into small pieces to be used by cement factories as an energy source, an alternative to low-grade mazout fuel oil, while other parts are recycled into mulch for playgrounds. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. An Ivorian designer aims to revolutionize African fashion using Ivorian traditions to dress celebrities.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
String art is not quite common in Africa, just as there are very few string artists around. Its commercial viability is also an issue, especially in a country like Nigeria, where other art forms are more popular and acceptable. But one Nigerian string artist wants to change all that and bring string art to the limelight in his country. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmus.
While most artists use pencils and brushes to express their art, Omotoyosi Ogunlende basically uses strings and nails. He's used unconventional materials like wood, hammer, strings and nails to design remarkable portraits of legends like Fela Kuti, Bob Marley, Wole Soyinka and many others. He first conceptualizes the outcome he intends to achieve, nails it down on wood and uses a series of intricate patterns to string the piece to life. Despite its awe-inspiring beauty, string art is uncommon and relatively unknown in this part of the world. Few people patronize it, and that has been a challenge for string artists like Toyosi. But with the help of social media, he's gradually making a case for his art form.
It's not a widely accepted, form of art in this part of the world, because trying to push it out there, trying to market it, trying to get people known. I also leverage on social media, which is my Instagram handle. I also push it on social media, Facebook, which that's for many artists right now. That's our own gallery.
Toyosi started out as a sculptor before encountering and falling in love with string art at an art conference in South Africa. The uniqueness of the art inspired him to dig deeper into it, and 4 years later, his own art has become an inspiration to others.
A lady sometimes back on Instagram, she's a cake maker. She just posted it and said my string art inspired her to produce this kind of cake, and I was, wow, oh, amazing. There's a lady too in Brazil that has been chatting me up. She's also a string artist and trying to ask me questions, how she can go about this, how she can go about that. So for me, it goes a long way. So you never can tell how many people you've been able to inspire or touch their lives.
It's general knowledge that creatives don't usually get paid anything commensurate with their work. But Toyosi believes that eventually his hard work would pay off.
Nothing brings money. But how diligent, how good, persistent, and creative you are with that thing you do, it will bring the money. So for me, what you do with your hands, diligently, wisely, persistently, will definitely bring that money.
Beyond monetary rewards, Toyosi says his greatest joy on the job is impacting his knowledge of string arts to others. He currently organizes classes to teach kids and adults how to string and is pushing for the art to take center stage in Africa. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Let's cross over to neighboring Cote d'Ivoire, where a young Ivorian designer's mission is to use her talent to revolutionize African fashion by showcasing Ivorian traditions through the styling and dressing of celebrities. CGTN's Brian Toussaint with the details.
Rebecca Zoro is the creator of the Yebi design clothing brand. She is today one of the few Cote d'Ivoire fashion designers who are rapidly gaining popularity due to their unique work. Currently, Rebecca is working on Lou, her new collection. In this collection, Rebecca seeks to promote the Gourou culture, an ethnic group from the southwest part of Cote d'Ivoire.
Lou means girl in the Goro language. The designs are inspired by the Goro masks and the woven loincloths. My end goal is to make known the Ivorian culture through fashion.
Unlike her other clothing lines, Rebecca's Yebi design stands out for its originality. In only 5 years of existence, her brand has already dressed several celebrities around the world, including American star Beyoncé.
When I sent the skirt to Beyoncé, I had no idea she would actually wear it. I was shocked and happy when I saw pictures of Beyoncé wearing my skirt on the internet. After dressing her, I started gaining popularity and got the privilege to dress other celebrities in France, the United States, and many journalists in Africa and around the world.
From the design to the marketing of her clothes, Rebecca is involved in everything that concerns her brand, a quality trait that many of her collaborators recognize in her.
I am Rebecca's photographer, and I am amazed every time I see her creations. Usually, she's the one who I turn to when I want to give gifts to my clients. She really does quality work.
As time goes by, the Yebi design brand is becoming more and more popular on the continent and around the globe. And this year, Rebecca's only dream is to create a men's clothing line. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Let's take a look now at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. African champions Algeria get a favorable group as the World Cup qualifiers draw takes place in Cairo.